Hi there, Paul Kirtley here, and today I want to talk to you about what are commonly known as ferro rods, firesteels, used to be known in some quarters as fireflashes or just a fire flash. People have laughed at me for using that word on YouTube in the comments before, but Ray Mears used to call them those back on some of the TV shows, and I spent a lot of time working with Ray Mears, of course, and I picked up some of his terminology. But you know, the ferro rod as it's commonly known now, that's what we're going to talk about today. And specifically, I'm not doing a review, I'm not doing a product test, I'm not doing demonstrations. I've shown technique on videos before, and I'll probably do some more in future. But what I wanted to talk about today is, because I get asked this question regularly, is which ferro rods do I like, which ones do I rate? And of course this is subjective, but it's based on my experience of teaching outdoors for many years, teaching bushcraft, and seeing what students get on with as well in terms of technique and applying technique, but also what I have used in all parts of the world that I've been to, whether it's, you know, northern Scandinavia in the Arctic Circle in the boreal forest, whether it's Canada on canoe trips in remote places, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in the States, lots of different places that I've used ferro rods, and I've come to some fairly firm conclusions about the types of ferro rods that I like. Now of course, if someone gives me a ferro rod of any type over no ferro rod, I'm going to be happy in a situation where I really need to get a fire going. But some are easier to use, and that's not just my subjective opinion, it's also me having seen students try them as well. Because I get students coming along on courses and they're like, I've got this ferro rod and I find it difficult, or we might have a conversation along the lines of, I've lent them a ferro rod if it's a short course, or I've given them a ferro rod if it's a longer course, and they get that as part of the equipment that they're provided with on the course, and they're making a comparison between a ferro rod that they've already got, maybe they've got it with them, and the one that we've just provided them with to use. And sometimes people find the ones that I like a little bit tricky if they're used to a different type, but generally people agree that the ones that I like tend to work well with the techniques that I teach. And so that's also something to bear in mind, and how you apply those techniques. But fundamentally, there are three brands that I particularly like. If you want the quick summary, here it is. These are the three that I like. In the center we have the classic Swedish Firesteel, now these days branded under Light My Fire. They've changed a bit over the years in terms of the handles, but the ferro rods have always been very good. StrikeFire, which is a British brand produced by Bush Gear, they are also ones that I like and I use and I give to students, either these or these. And one that I've also started using relatively recently, but I find equally as good as these, is the Dragon's Breath Firesteels, the Dragon's Breath ferro rods from Survival Supplies Australia. So particularly if you're in Australia, you might want to seek those out, but also check out Survival Supplies Australia anyway. They've got some good stuff. I've got no connection to any of these companies other than, I will say, full disclosure, I made a video for StrikeFire on how to, lots of different ways of using that. That's on my YouTube channel. Didn't get paid for that. It was just something they asked me to do. I like the product. I'll link that below because there's more technique there for you. Survival Supplies Australia did send me a few of these free to try out. I already had one actually that I'd been given by Gordon Dedman from Bushcraft Survival Australia, because he liked them as well. I'd already tried one out, and then they sent me a couple more to test out and for other people to try as well. So those are the ones that I particularly like, but I want to talk about why, if you want to stick around for that, because that's also important, and some of it's to do with technique. So I'm going to put a knife there as well. I've actually got this one on my belt as well, because we'll talk about knives in the context of technique as well. And I'll link to some of the videos that I've made in the past as well. The first thing I should say, these are all new. These three that I said that I like, because I wanted brand new examples of each of them to show you where I haven't messed around with them. This is as they come with the lanyards, the strikers that they come with, and without having been used. But I talk to you from the perspective of having used ferro rods for decades and having worn them down to nubs you know, literally thousands and thousands of strikes, and you know, these were full-size ones at some point, and they've been retired now, at least to the drawer. And there's a few other things that I want to talk about that I do and don't like as well. And it's not that none of them work, it's just that, you know, what's optimal, okay? Now, all of these that I like here share something in common, and that's they're all of a very similar hardness. And compared to some cheap, and I don't mean to be to denigrate the Chinese in this sense, but some of the no brand name unnamed ones that come from China that you buy on Amazon are really quite soft and they don't work very well. I find, and a lot of my students find, that these type that are quite hard, that you need to push quite hard to get sparks off, but once you do, you get really good sparks coming off, are ones that both last a long time and you get very consistent results with. And so these are all very, very similar in terms of the hardness of them, and they may be a little bit more on the hard side compared to some of the generic ones as well. That's something that I look for. Also, you'll notice the thickness of the rods as well, and I don't know, I could have measured it before I made this video, I didn't think to, but basically what, in terms of like my Fire or the Swedish Firesteel would call the army size model. So that was kind of the original size that was made for the Swedish military. They didn't have an ergonomic handle on like that. They more like had a handle on like these StrikeFires do. It was a more basic handle like this one does. This is a Swedish one, but this is a thinner one, and I'm not a super fan of these. You can see that it's a lower diameter, it's about half the diameter. It's also shorter. So that has some issues in terms of how much material that you can scrape off in one go, as well as how long a rake you can get if you want to do a spray of sparks. Now these are super lightweight, and they might be great for, you know, if you're doing a lightweight hiking trip with a gas stove and you just want a quick spark to light a gas stove with or something. That might be something that you would take, because this weighs less than that. If grams are really essential, then maybe a small one like that could be justified. And actually that's why I have that. But otherwise, I like a full-size army one like this. They're a bit heavier, but that also fits in your pocket. I don't have one here, but I do have one somewhere, you know, one of the large ones that's a bit more like a small truncheon. I know Dave Canterbury at Pathfinder likes those, and yes, you can push loads of sparks off them, but personally I find I tend to choose not to take them because they weigh a fair amount. Yes, they have some of the uses for self-defense, if you know, a certain size, but we're not talking about that today. We're just talking about firelighting, and what I like personally, I like a pocket-sized one like this, so like a full-sized army one like this. Now, what the advantage of the StrikeFire and the Dragon's Breath have over this one, with this has the ergonomic handle, which I really quite like, but it's not essential to me, but I quite like it. These have slightly more material that is proud of the handle, which if you like a long strike, which for certain applications works well, particularly if you're holding the knife static and you're raking like so, yeah, that works really nicely. So that's got a slightly longer one, but they're all very, very similar otherwise, okay? But that's just something to bear in mind. They've all got good grip on them, which is important. I don't mind these Bayite ones. These seem to be more prevalent than they are now. But there's a couple of things I don't like about them. One is they are a little bit softer than these. They still spark really well, but I find that it's just a bit softer. And for me, that doesn't work quite as well on some applications. I'm not going to go into all of those today. But the primary thing I don't like about it is, I know some people really like this corded grip here that gives them a good grip, but I find that I don't get the stability there that I do with a handle, like so. I like ones with a handle on. That's just a personal preference, but it's something for you to think about. because I find with these I end up holding these further down anyway, even for a longer rake strike, which limits how much I've got. And because they're a bit softer, I sometimes find that I don't get the spray of sparks that I want. So I'm very, very happy to have one of those in my pocket, but it's not my first choice. As I say, one of these three would be my first choice. Now, these all come with good strikers as well, and they've all got quite an ergonomic striker, which actually is quite important. There's a little handle on this one, on the StrikeFire. Now, they used to come with a very, very basic striker like that, which is also what the old Light My Fires used to have as well. It's literally like a piece of plate steel with a bit of a burr on it, like a furniture scraper. And that of course works once you get the varnish off. Yeah, that works. But the thing is, it's also got a burr where your hand is as well. I hope you can see all that. And they're a little, I find them a little bit harder to use. I can still use them fine, but they're a little bit harder to use. And if you've got cold hands and you're trying to grip this, you're holding metal, which isn't great. It's very conductive. It can also have a sharp edge on it. And I also find that students can find them quite uncomfortable when they're learning. They end up hurting their finger there, almost like lacerating it a little bit with the burr. And over time as well, the burrs on these tend to go away, and you need to get them in a vise and file it with a metal file. But they do work. But a piece of hacksaw blade also works, right? And actually can work a lot better than that. These, on the other hand, same steel, but the new striker, yeah, much better, much bigger shower of sparks, much more comfortable in the hand. And because you're holding it quite close to where you're striking as well, much less leverage, you can push a lot. So I like a good striker on them as well. If I'm using a striker, that comes with a good striker. The Light My Fires come with a nice ergonomic striker, which works well as well, works excellently. And so does the Dragon's Breath. The Dragon's Breath one is a bit more like a basic striker, but they've at least differentiated between this area where there's got a little point for your thumb to grip, and this area where there's a nice burr on the striker as well. And again, really good sparks on that, and it's comfortable in the hand. Now, that's quite stiff, a bit like a hacksaw blade as well. That works very well. And what I also like about this is it comes on a long lanyard, which is good for putting it into your pocket. I would still put a knot there rather than relying on that. I've talked about lanyards in the past. I'm not going to revisit that too much today, but I like the fact it's got a long lanyard simply because you can manipulate this like you want. Some of these, like the one downside of these is like you can hardly get to the end of the ferro rod before you're at the limit of the cord, which I don't like, because I always put longer cords on Firesteels ferro rods that come with short cords. So that's one downside with the Light My Fires, that I don't like the short lanyard on them. That one on the StrikeFire is just long enough, still a little short. The best one is that's just a piece of black paracord, but you can replace that yourself. So fundamentally, these are all very similar steels. The compound seems to be very similar, the makeup, the hardness seems to be quite similar, and they've all got good strikers on them. Those are things that I like, and they're all of that original army model thickness that's sturdy enough that's going to last a long time. It is big enough that you can get a good spray of sparks or a big push of sparks off the end. I've shown that technique in other videos where you push a big spark off the end. That's how I end up rubbing these down to a nub, these types. I use that technique a lot. They last a long time still with that technique. Good ergonomic handle of some description that sits in your hand, whether it's holding it like this or if you're holding it further back, that actually sits behind your fingers really well and locks it into position. Like so, locks it into there. If you're pushing a big spark off the end, that locks it into position. I like that rather than this. This can move around more in the hand. This is still usable, but again, I'm talking about optimal, and these are sturdy enough that they'll last a long time. You can get big sparks, but they're not so big that you won't always stick them in your pocket, which is important. This is an essential pocket item for me on pretty much any trip. those three there. And then in terms of technique, you'll know that I like using the push technique with a knife. I've covered that more in other videos. I'll take the one out of my pocket just so you can see what tends to happen. I tend to create a bit of a gouge in it because I'm always pushing sparks off the end, but I can use the tip of the knife or towards the tip of the knife if the back is square enough to push sparks. And I've got a whole video on how to do that elsewhere, which you can see. And if you have a Mora knife, you will typically need to file it here sufficiently that the back is square so that you can scrape. And I'm just doing it off to the side of my nice bandana here. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm pushing with my thumb, but again, I've covered that technique in detail in another video, so have a look there. But they all of these work well with that technique, whereas softer ones sometimes don't work very well with that technique at all. So we want a very good concentrated spark, which you need for lighting certain materials. So that's that. I hope you can see there that there are some brands there that I do like. They consistently make good ferro rods. The StrikeFire, Light My Fire and Dragon's Breath from Survival Supplies Australia. All very good, all similar pricing. The StrikeFire is a bit cheaper. The Light My Fire is a bit more expensive, but it does have the ergonomic grips and it does have a little whistle in the striker. That's one of the reasons they tend to be a bit more pricey. And the Dragon's Breath, again, very, very similar. All work really well. So I hope you can see that, yeah, there are some brands there that I like, but also there's some principles there. Good, solid, army-sized rod, solid ergonomic handle that fits in your hand, that grips in your hand, and a good striker that is beyond that very basic striker that used to be supplied and still is supplied on some models as well. So that's what I like in a good ferro rod. For me, it seems to work for my students, for most of my students on the courses as well. I will perhaps do some more technique videos in future. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to do that, or if there's anything particularly that you struggle with ferro rods, any particular technique that you struggle with, let me know in the comments below, and that might guide me towards helping you out with some future videos. And you know the score. If you like this video, please like it. If you like to see more of these types of videos, click the subscribe button, and also if you can, click the bell button so that you get to get some notifications. Otherwise the videos tend to get hidden even if you want to see them. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like your friends to see it, share it with them as well. And I look forward to hearing from you in the comments below. Look, I can't speak. I look forward to hearing from you in the comments below. As I've said before, I can't reply to all comments on all my videos across all the different videos over the years, but I do tend to try and keep up with comments from the most recent videos. And of course, if there's a question that I can answer there, I'll try and do that, or maybe I'll answer it in a future video by making a video that will help other people as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, comments, suggestions, problems in the comments below, and I'll do my best to help you with those one way or the other. I always look forward to reading your comments, and yeah, I'll see you on the next video before too long. Take care. Cheers.